This is video history from the ACOG Jacobs Library for the History of Obstetrics and Gynecology in America. It's a fine May afternoon in the spring of the year 2000. We've come to a new millennium. And our guest for the history this afternoon is Dr. William C. Andrews from Norfolk, Virginia. Dr. Andrews has a long record of accomplishments, and we're going to talk about some of them this afternoon. Bill, tell me where you were born and grew up.
Born and raised in Norfolk, Virginia, and amazingly, I still live in the same house. My father was an obstetrician before me, and it's 4 blocks from the hospital. There I've lived, except for education and full time in the military.
Well, in this peripatetic age, that's a remarkable accomplishment. And you came from an obstetrician family. Your brother is an obstetrician gynecologist, of course. Some renown, as are you. Where did you get your education? I suppose probably in Norfolk.
Well, I went to Norfolk through the 10th grade and went to a school called Woodbury Forest, which is a boarding school up near Charlottesville, and went on to Princeton and Johns Hopkins Med School, New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center for my residency.
And what years was that?
I was Princeton. I went to accelerated program during the war. A little crazy. I started there in June of 42, and by November of 43, I piled up all my pre-med and went on to Hopkins Med School. So I'd get it or maybe not get it. So I missed having lots of peaceful times at Princeton, but I had a great time. And I doubled up. And so I ended up in a crazy way. Hopkins deaccelerated in the spring of 46. The war ended. I went back to Princeton, graduated with my original class, and a year later graduated from Hopkins Med School.
So your graduation was in 46
from Princeton, 47.
47. That's pretty accelerated, yeah. Right? And residency training then was, as you said,
New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center, New York lying in where, interestingly, my father had his residency there in 1905. The total program was 6 months in. When I went, it was 5 years.
Your father was a faster learner, maybe.
I'm sure of that.
Who was the chief at Cornell when you were there?
Henricus Standa, my first year. He died at the end of my intern year, and then R. Gordon Douglas was my chief. Wonderful man.
Dr. Standa, of course, had a textbook.
Yes, he did.
Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. R. Gordon Douglas was himself a president of ACOG.
He was president of ACOG and of the board and of American Obstetrical and Gynecological Society.
You then, after all that, went back to Norfolk, not surprisingly, perhaps. And, were you in practice with your brother?
I was in practice with my brother. Actually, I went through 6 months of agonizing. Gordon Douglas kindly offered me a faculty position there. And we went back and forth to stay in New York, which was exciting, or whether to come home. Home ties went out. Mason needed help. Dad had died, and he was practicing solo and working his head off. So we went home.
Were the two of you in practice together, or were there more?
Well, for 10 years, it was just the two of us, and then Bill Hugh joined us, a third partner. We started enjoying this every third night work. All of a sudden, he got called in the Army. He was on the Berry plan. So I went back every other night for another 2 years, and he came back, and then we went to 4 and 5. And Mason, at that point, took a sabbatical at Hopkins, and a medical school started, which Mason began. And he went as chairman of the department and had to leave our private practice.
I was going to ask you about the medical school. What year did the medical school in Norfolk start? Because I know the Andrews had a big role in it.
It was 1975, which actually started the place with students. Mason organized the group of men to raise the money. I had a friend in the state legislature who got the legislation through to give them the power them to demand and set up the Medical Center Authority, which ran it. And he was chair of the board for the first 8 years and then statutorily had to rotate off.
What was the motivation for starting medical school in Norfolk? There were not a lot of new medical schools being started in those years.
Well, the motivation was probably the largest metropolitan area that didn't have one. But from a personal point of view, we both missed academia. And we liked our home city and its community, and
Have your own medical school.
have both.
The medical school has, I think, prospered over the years. Tell me a little something about it.
It's prospered greatly, and I think the OBGYN department has been the strongest department in the school from the beginning. We were very fortunate that Howard Jones became 65 years of age, and Johns Hopkins required he retire. Came to work for us, and now 24 years later, he's still working.
And of course, his wife, Georgiana, came with him when they came to Norfolk. Tell me a little bit about the things he did in support of the medical school.
Well, he is, in so many ways, he's just a brilliant person. And his store of knowledge is, at grand rounds, Howard has not done obstetrics since medical school, but he's very knowledgeable in literature, and he contributes significantly in discussing the OB cases. The IVF program, interestingly, Patrick Steptoe, the Englishman who did the first successful IVF, he and his wife were visiting Betsy and me in Norfolk, and I invited Howard and Georgiana Jones and my brother Mason and his wife for drinks with them. And Patrick said, no IVF in the United States, why don't you start a program here? I'll help you get it started. And that was the beginning of IVF in Norfolk.
It was the beginning of IVF in the United States, wasn't
That's
it?
right. That's right.
Who all participated in that?
Well, initially, it was Howard and Georgiana and Mason, and the group grew over the succeeding years. But Howard and Georgiana, Suhail Moasha now is the one that's running the IVF part of it. Bill Gibbons, Mason retired at age 72, and Bill Gibbons came in as department chairman. He also works very much in it.
You had the first successful IVF birth in the United States.
That's correct. That was a cause for an article in Life magazine, Howard and Georgiana and the baby on the cover of Life. And we've now had over 2,000 live births.
2,000. So it's still a busy program.
Very busy
How many births a year come from the IVF program?
I think they're doing about 600 cases a year. So my guess is somewhere around 600 to 800 and maybe 200 live births a year. Take-home babies is Howard's term.
Yes. Is that how does that compare with other programs across the
It's
U.S.?
among the best in the country. That and all along in the techniques for IVF and the egg culture and all phases of it.
Well, these of course are important parts of your career, but you've also been much involved with the American Fertility Society and with the college. Tell me a little bit about the American Fertility Society from your standpoint.
Well, the American Fertility Society started out with some 100 members back, I guess, 50 years ago. Herbert Thomas was the godfather who shepherded it along and did a wonderful job, and it grew to some 11,000 members, primarily involved in enhancing conception and as well as preventing it. And I started out with several committee tasks, postgraduate program chairman, and became president, and subsequently medical director, and then for 5 years I was executive director before I put my hat in the ring for the ACOG presidency.
When did you become first involved with AFS?
Gosh, probably back in 65 or something like that.
This was well ahead of your association with the Joneses.
That's correct. Well, the Joneses taught me in med school. And
so there was a connection.
Friendship, a long way back, but close friendship after they came to Norfolk. They're good friends of Mason.
What years were you the president of the American Fertility Society?
President in 1978. And subsequently went on to the other jobs and was executive director from 88 to 92. Working in the district program of the college, concomitantly, I was program chairman for an annual district meeting in 81, and then became secretary of that district and vice chairman and chairman.
Moved from there.
Worked up.
The American Fertility Society had its biggest growth when? I mean, was this a reflection of IVF, or was it?
IVF contributed to it significantly because most of the papers on IVF were presented there and in the journal Fertility and Sterility, which was the AFS's journal. The name was changed right at the end of my tenure as executive director to the American Society for Reproductive Medicine to accurately reflect that it wasn't just infertility, but all phases of reproductive endocrinology.
The American Fertility Society growth in coming along with this, has that plateaued, or is it in terms of membership, or is it
actually
still a growing?
No, it's
society?
tapered off recently, and part of it is they've become more specialists, the people with certification as reproductive endocrinologists. The generalist, if you went back 20 years ago, most infertility was done by the generalist and OBGYN.
I certainly did it.
Yes, indeed, we all did.
We all did.
And as this became a bigger portion of more and more of the care went to the specialists and less to the generalists. And then, so I think the membership of now ASRM down on 8,000 from the 11,000 feet.
Well, that was one busy part of your life. How did you become actively involved in ACOG?
Well, I worked up through the district, as I mentioned, and I thought when I was finishing as district chair, a 3-year position, as you know, that was the end of my tenure at ACOG. I chaired the standards committee and had some other committee work, but I thought that was the end of my career with ACOG. And
well, I remember encouraging you once that perhaps it really wasn't.
You encouraged me, and couple of other friends encouraged me. And pleased when I was put up for vice president, was elected.
What year was that?
As vice president, I was president from 94 to 95, so in 93 to 94 that I was vice president.
Vice president.
I enjoyed every bit of it. Had some crises along the way, but always challenges.
What were your particular initiatives at the time you were president?
Well, my initiative was education of both women and physicians about menopause and the life after menopause. And it's turned out to be a very popular subject and going on now. Some
certainly is.
5 years after the presidency, I've done a lot of lecturing on it. The college has gotten more and more involved with technical bulletins, patient information, brochures, and now a magazine for the laity, Managing Menopause, which reached a circulation of some 700,000. And they're very successful.
Certainly has, indeed. And I know that you've also been involved in ethical issues, and there seem to be a lot of ethical issues that relate to fertility and in vitro fertilization and so on. Tell me something about that.
Well, they do indeed. Well, I guess I'm involved in AFS starting an ethics committee, and then, as you remember, AFS and my efforts and ACOG through yours helped start NAREL, National Advisory Board of Ethics and Reproduction.
Neighbor.
I always get these acronyms mixed up. And I think that was very successful. I'm sorry to see that phasing out. I guess the foundation support is with it, but I thought it was a great idea and it was important.
Well, ethics is, particularly I think reproductive ethics has attracted a lot more adherents and perhaps a lot more critics, and has gone off into other venues.
It's gotten polarized over the issue of abortion, and more emotion sometimes than logic.
What role did you have with the various efforts at the National Institutes of Health related to the ethics of reproduction?
I have not really played a role there, Warren. I watched with interest what they've done. But
your input came through Neighbor.
Yeah, that's right.
Since the time that you've been president, what sorts of things have you been involved in? I know you're active because I see you everywhere. So.
Well, I'm working, as you know, in the Jacobs Institute of Reproductive Medicine, Jacobs Institute of Women's Health. I'm on the board there, and also working in the managed care field with the HEDIS measurements, and we've gotten a measure for management of menopause as part of the NCQA, the National Committee for Quality Assurance's program to make one of the requirements for the managed care programs that are measured and assessed by that mechanism. They have to inform their patients of their menopause.
It's
the NCQA, all these acronyms.
we talk in acronyms, yes. You've certainly continued to be very active in taking a important career in reproductive medicine and now being involved in the things that both deal with the ethics and measure its effectiveness and all that sort of thing. And what do you do for fun?
Well, for fun, I tennis for a long time. We had a boat until I had to pay for children's education. Nobody wanted to buy the children, so we had to sell the boat. And read a great deal. We still keep up with the literature. Do a little major gardening, pruning. Betsy, my wife, now has hurt her back, so she can't weed, so she stands over me and says, "That's a weed. You pull that up. You don't pull that up." So we do.
How much international involvement do you still have?
I was president of the International Federation of Fertility Societies, and I was program chairman for that organization. So I was quite active in that for about 20 years. My most recent thing, I was on a consensus panel at a meeting in Milan in June. We put together a consensus statement on management, on menopause and hormone replacement. It's an interesting experience with people from around the world.
I would guess have had as diversified a background as anybody. President of ACOG.
I think that's true.
Because you came to it on not so much on the basis of office holding as you did on the basis of science, perhaps. If someone were starting out today in the field of reproductive medicine or finishing a fellowship, would you have some special advice for them? What are the exciting things they should be thinking about?
Gosh, there's so much that's exciting, Warren. I think involvement. I think today a young physician to start off as a junior fellow and get involved in the junior fellow organizations and then work through the sections. There's a lot of work to be done there. And then the ACOG committee activities and a wonderful privilege of sitting on great educational opportunities there. So I also was for 8 years on the FDA's committee on fertility and maternal health drugs.
So that was a federal contribution, yes.
I guess another thing, I was chair of the National Medical Committee of Planned Parenthood for a while. Got another bit of exposure there.
It's hard for me to think of anything that you haven't done. It's related to the field of
an interesting
infertility and
enjoyable life. Now part of my fun is Betsy takes me traveling, a fair amount for lecturing. We just come back from around the world, which was an exciting trip.
There aren't many people around the world that don't know about the Andrews.
Well, it's a generous assessment.
It's great to talk. Been great to talk with you this afternoon, and I think you've said things that will carry on wisdom when people look at this interview in the coming years and see what a career can really amount to. Bill,
thanks very much, Warren. Enjoyed doing it.